Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. Today, we've got a special episode for us. We are going to be talking about the nervous system with Rishma Dhalla. She is no stranger to the Healthy Wave vibes, so everyone knows her, but I'm just going to give you her quick bio. Rishma is a 51-year-old married mother of two adult sons, and like many in their 50s, she has lived her half century full of ups and downs. She has worked as an occupational therapist over 28 years, and in 2020 decided to take the plunge to entrepreneurship. She started her own business called OT for Life and has been supporting clients through their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual recovery. Rishma's focus more recently has honed in on the mind-body connection. She educates her clients on the nervous system, including dysregulation of the nervous system and proven strategies to regulate and stabilize the nervous system. Just as a disclosure, whatever is discussed here, it is only as for educational purposes. Please do check with your medical practitioner. I'm Fatima.
I'm John.
Hi, I'm Cyrene.
Excellent. Let's bring on Rishma. Hello, Rishma.
Hi, how are you all? Nice to see you again.
Good. It's nice to have you here again with us. It's been a while.
Yes, it has been a while, and I'm always so happy when I'm invited, so thank you.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. So let's get started. So what is the nervous system, and why is it so important to our mind, body, health, and our soul?
Yeah, and it really is. So the nervous system is essentially the brain and spinal cord, right? And so the nervous system is actually what keeps our body working, keeps it going, keeps it moving. There's one side of the nervous system, which is voluntary, which is the part where we can control our muscles and I can move my arm and we can lift things up. That's voluntary. We can do things with our body because we want to. And then there's the side of the nervous system, which is involuntary, and that's what actually regulates things like our heart rate, our blood pressure. It takes care of all the internal organs. It looks at things like hormone levels and neurotransmitters, all of that kind of stuff. And so that piece that we cannot voluntarily control, but it's regulated, it can get off balance when there are things like anxiety, or if there's a threat that's perceived, or if we enter that fight or flight or freeze stage of like the stress response, which I've talked about in my previous, talks on this show. So when we enter that sympathetic nervous system activation, then it really dysregulates the nervous system. It throws the hormones off balance, and it really has an impact on our internal organs, our circadian rhythm, not to mention our thoughts, our emotions, and then consequently the way that we actually live our life. Because if we're feeling off or not balanced inside, then it actually plays out in the way that we experience our life and our relationships and things like that.
You've touched on so many things in such a little sentence, but also, no, it's perfect. It's so true. Like, it just goes to show you how connected our nervous system is, whether it affects our hormones, our sleep, our mood. It affects so many things, and a lot of times people don't realize how interconnected they are, right? And when you say fight or flight, or when we're facing something, what does that look like, and what could that be?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Fatima. So fight or flight is when our sympathetic nervous system is activated. So that's when we perceive a threat of some kind. It doesn't have to be physically somebody that's attacking us, although that's how our brain is hardwired to perceive a threat from the time of the cave people. But, now in the modern world, it can simply be, the tone of somebody's voice that makes you feel like they've insulted you, for example, right? So something that we perceive as a threat, and then it activates our sympathetic nervous system. And so what happens is the cortisol gets released, adrenaline increases, our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate goes up. And the oxygen is circulated to our vital organs. So not the digestive system, and it stops producing melatonin. And so that's why things like sleep is a challenge for people who are undergoing stress, for example, right?
Makes sense.
They can't sleep. They can't stop thinking about whatever it is that might be bothering them. And so that's the sympathetic nervous system. And there's lots of things that happen. It has an impact on our insulin as well, because it actually steals glucose from any organ that it can find so that it can send it up to our brain and our arms and legs, so that if we actually have a true threat that is a physical threat that's trying to attack us, we can actually fight it off and we can save ourselves and protect ourselves. So the sympathetic nervous system really is that protective mechanism, and it's really important. We don't want to shut the sympathetic nervous system off by any means, because it needs to be there so that in a real threat situation, we can actually act and protect ourselves. But I think that what has happened and what is happening with social media and constant sort of technology and staying in touch with somebody like immediately and those kinds of things, and not having a lot of downtime with our own brain and just kind of with who we are on the inside, the sympathetic nervous system tends to be turned on more than it gets turned off. And then there are many people who just really are in a constant state of having their sympathetic nervous system kind of always on. So they're always alert, hyper, feeling anxious, feeling like something's not right, like they're ready for a fight, right? Those kinds of things. They're ready to defend themselves. But this goes across even in terms of impacting our perception of physical pain, so that there are people who have chronic pain or persistent pain who also have this low level sympathetic nervous system activation, right? And again, impacts to all kinds of systems within our body, not to mention how we think about things, how we feel about things, and then how competent or confident we may feel to actually deal with the way that we're feeling.
So what is one of the tools that helps to release it, to deal with the stress?
Yeah, and so there are actually many tools. Thanks for that, Cyrene. I think that one of the most important things is to be aware of what your own signs are, right? So we all respond differently, and our sympathetic nervous system also responds differently. And so it's important to know what your own signs are. So for example, if you start to all of a sudden have difficulty sleeping, maybe for you that's a sign that your nervous system is dysregulated. And so then you can go ahead and try to figure out, okay, why is it dysregulated? So the first step would be to learn what your signs are. Is it that you get more emotional? Is it that you get angry? Is it that you start feeling, overwhelmed or disorganized or scatterbrained, right? Like, so what is the sign? And then once you recognize that your sympathetic nervous system is likely activated, then there are many things you can actually do to stabilize and regulate the nervous system. So the quickest and easiest thing that all of us can do is deep breathing. That is kind of the immediate thing that you can do in any given moment if you're feeling as though your nervous system is getting dysregulated. Just do deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing from the belly, not from the chest. And what the deep breathing actually does is it actually activates I don't want to get too complicated, but it activates the system that actually helps to reduce cortisol. So it counteracts the sympathetic nervous system. So it reduces cortisol, reduces heart rate, reduces blood pressure. So deep breathing is something that is quick and easy and in the moment you can do. But then there are also strategies that you can actually make part of your life in terms of like a long-term stability of your nervous system. So things like meditation, things that you guys talk about on the show all the time, right? So meditation, mindfulness, exercise, laughter, time out in nature, time with pets, time with youngsters. So many of those strategies are tried and true in terms of nervous system regulation. And then there's some that are a little bit different, but also work in the sense of you can actually slow down your own nervous system. And you can do this simply by slowing down the speed of your talking, just like I'm doing right now. So if you intentionally slow things down, it will also then result in a calmness and a slowing down of your nervous system. So we can take care of our nervous system from the inside out, which is the preferred way, but we can also do from outside in by monitoring our breathing, slowing down our speech, things like that.
Mhm. You know, I think it's when you go in back to the fight or flight aspect of things. You know, before, I think, you know, back in the caveman days, the fight or flight came maybe irregularly, where, you know, a threat's coming maybe once a day when you're actually going to hunt, or you're going to defend your I guess your family. But today, you know, that's very rare. But what is constantly bombarding us is this, you know. And I think, you know, for us to really have those moments of you know, deflating ourselves, we're always thinking about something. We always have this in front of us. So when you're saying about sleep, you know, if we're looking at our phones, if we're on the computer, we got the TV on, right before we go to bed, we got our brain is still going at 110%. And it's hard to, this is coming at us more frequently throughout the day, that we don't have these times to really even take a break to do the breathing exercises, or to go and have a cup of tea, or to listen to some positivity or things like that. I think that's the challenge, is we're in a rush, you know, world right now. And to just step back, some people don't even realize until it's too late, because they get to bed and they can't get to bed, but they've had 12 hours of go.
Yeah, and John, the other thing is, so it's not just the technology that we're now faced with that makes our life way better, but then also has these unintended consequences, right? But it's also other factors, like actually since electricity was discovered, our circadian rhythm has gone off, because the circadian rhythm was actually based on sunset and sunrise. And so with the advent of electricity, and now people can actually work longer and can still work when it's dark out because you have that light, it's thrown our circadian rhythm off. And so that's another factor that we as human beings are actually having to deal with without realizing that, you know, this is what's causing it, right? And then the other factor is, it's not just what we see or interact with through technology or with other people as we live our day-to-day life, and this whole rush and go, which I totally get. I'm in that same situation, right? But it's also that when we are alone, even if it's for a few minutes inside our minds, think about where the majority of us tend to go to in our minds. We tend to go to places in the past where maybe we've made mistakes and we regret them and we wish that we could have done things differently. Or we go to a place in our mind that's way off into the future that we are worrying about and playing that what if game with ourselves. And so we are constantly bombarding our sympathetic nervous system by the thoughts that we have, because our brain has no clue about whether something that you're thinking about is actually happening in real life, or whether it's something you're remembering or imagining. So the brain only perceives the threat, and then as soon as that threat is perceived, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, right? It activates that fight or flight response. So there are so many layers as to why most of us are walking around with a dysregulated nervous system. And I think that technology, like you mentioned, is one of them. The circadian rhythm, because of electricity, is another one. But it's also just, yeah, what we perceive on a day-to-day basis as a threat, and then where we spend the majority of our time in our minds in terms of either sort of depressive symptoms, dwelling on the past, or anxiety symptoms, worrying about the future.
And as a nutritionist, I do need to add that food is a very big component of stress, because we could quite easily be having something that we're sensitive to or allergic to, or we've got inflammation that you've mentioned earlier. And when we are in fight or flight mode, guess what? Our food does not get digested, and everything, as Rishma had said, all of our energy, all of our resources go towards dealing with whatever that issue is. And so food is also a very, very big component of regulating your nervous system. And a lot of times it's often forgotten, but it, take everything in tandem, and it gives you this huge, beautiful ball of amazingness. But if one thing's out, you can see it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Fatima, and I'm sorry that I didn't mention it, but yes, nutrition actually plays a really key role, because what happens is, imagine that you maybe aren't really aware of how to regulate your nervous system as yet. Maybe you're just starting to learn, about yourself and about your thoughts and how to shift things for yourself. If your nutrition isn't actually supporting a healthy gut, then you're actually putting yourself at risk for having a lot of digestive issues, because you haven't quite figured out how to regulate your nervous system yet. But if your nutrition is actually in line with what your digestive system needs to keep moving, to keep working properly at its maximum and optimum, then you're actually a step ahead in terms of regulating your nervous system and not having that impact you as much in terms of things like constipation and just a slow gut and things like that. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Fatima.
I guess I've heard like that saying is like stress eating, right? You're eating while you're stressed. You don't think about what you're eating. You're not conscious of what you're actually putting in your mouth, which could be, too many cookies. You want one, but then next thing you know, the whole bag is gone because you're not paying attention. And that's happened to me as well. And then you kind of pay for the price later.
Yeah, and another thing about stress eating is that, it is connected to stress, obviously, in the sense of the brain ends up stealing glucose, right, from our organs, because it's trying to deal with the stress and it's trying to provide, instant fuel and instant energy. But then those organs are going, what happened to my sugar source? What happened to my energy source, right? And so ergo, that tub of ice cream or those cookies or whatever, right? So it makes sense. Once you understand it, it makes sense. But I think that, like we said in the beginning, and I think Fatima also said it, that we really have to be aware of how every single thing is connected. Our thoughts are connected, our emotions are connected, our actions are connected, our nutrition is connected, everything is connected, and one thing will impact everything else.
And I think as we get older, when we're in our 20s, we get certain stressors, right? And when we get 30s and 40s, they all change, but they become different type of stresses that get compounded.
Yeah.
So as we get older, then what happens to this nervous system? Because it's starting to break down over the years, does it not?
Yes, and so that's really important to know, is that if you're not able to learn how to regulate your nervous system earlier in your life, then yes, as life goes on and as life throws challenges at us, because it does for everyone, then it can become really, really difficult for people to know how to actually deal with everything that's going on. And so the consequences of a long-term dysregulated nervous system leads to chronic illnesses, chronic pain, cancer, mental illness problems, right? So it's not pleasant. It doesn't feel pleasant to live in that. And it definitely has unpleasant sort of consequences and side effects. So yeah, and then you layer on things like menopause and, arthritis and things that kind of just happen as we get older, right? For those of us that are female, obviously the menopause. So, right, and you layer those things on. And so if you haven't actually learned how to deal with it and how to effectively manage changes in your nervous system because of other things that are going on, it becomes really difficult. And you find yourself in a situation where you might feel like, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what's happening, and then it starts to impact your relationships, right? And it just kind of spirals downhill.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say relationships, that's at the end, is the relationships that we're putting out and that we're receiving is directly related to our stress. How are we receiving them? How are we being perceived? you always hear about, people can tell how you're feeling when you walk in a room, but how you're projecting yourself. And if you're all out of sync because of all the things going on, you didn't get enough sleep, you're not eating right, you're not, having time for yourself, breathing and all that. I'm sure when you talk to your spouse or someone coming in and you had a bad day, it's going to continue to fuel.
Yes, and one of the other things is that I'm really glad you mentioned it, John, because it's about the energy that we give off, right? And the vibration that we might be operating at, right? And so those are things that we might not be able to see, but we can definitely feel it about each other. So even though right now we're not physically together in the same space, but you can feel my energy through Zoom, right? So we can definitely feel each other's energy and vibration, and that's really important, so that if what's going on for you inside here is that you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling angry and you're feeling anxious, right? And you're not happy with your life and the way that it is, that will play itself out in terms of the way that you interact with the people that are around you. So that, I mean, we've all been in the situation where, for example, we're having a conversation with somebody and they say something and it's not meant in any insulting way or anything, but we get really defensive and we take it as an insult because we're probably compromised or feeling vulnerable because some other stuff has been going on for us in our lives. And so when we are vulnerable, right, when our immune system is lower, then we are more prone and more susceptible to the negative impacts. And that definitely can happen from the people that are around us. Not intentionally, right? But it can happen, and then it can cause tensions and problems with relationships. Absolutely.
That's the fight aspect then.
Yeah. You get defensive and you feel like you're being attacked. But because you're already in that state, you're already feeling vulnerable and you're already feeling like you've been attacked because you've been thinking about it and everything. And so you come in with that energy of being sort of defensive and on guard. And so then it doesn't take very much when you're already in that state for something to actually activate it even more.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So breathe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that breathing is the most simple thing that we can do, but I definitely think that, allowing things like meditation to be part of your life is really important, and mindfulness, because like you say, John, like we have so much on the go all the time that we really need to take opportunities and be mindful and come back to our body, our mind, and all of our senses in the moment, because I think that our mind is always in 1,000 different places at the same time. So we need to make sure that we're able to bring our mind central and focused to whatever this moment is, and sort of relish and cherish the moment with all of your senses, right? And when we can do that, when we can actually be mindful and be in a state of mindfulness, we are actually then increasing our activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, which we want, and decreasing activation of the sympathetic nervous system. So it's all the same stuff. We know it, we talk about it, but it has been scientifically proven that if you participate in things like exercise, mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing, really removing yourself from toxic situations and looking for those healthy relationships, right? And really learning about yourself. So take time to journal, reflect, practice gratitude. That's like one of the most effective things that we can do is practice gratitude, right? So all of those things work really well to regulate our nervous system. Not to mention things like singing, humming, all of those things are actually really, really good for the nervous system too, because they activate our vagus nerve in the front, and that's what we want.
I think there's a challenge coming on, guys.
Ooh.
A breathing challenge?
Well, I mean, okay, so we are coming to an end. Sorry, Rishma.
That's okay.
Time goes by so quickly, but I think you just gave me an idea for a challenge as we were talking. So, are you guys up for a singing challenge or lip syncing challenge?
Why does it always have to be performing?
Because that gets you out of your comfort zone.
That's my fight or flight right now.
I know. That's why. That's the whole thing. Are you guys up for it?
I don't know how you lip sync to something when you're not allowed to have music on.
Well,
Um,
TikTok, they have the little clips on, so you can use like a TikTok video and do some videos.
Oh.
Are you guys up for this
Put it-
challenge?
put it
I
out there.
I feel a lot of hesitation here.
I
I'm
thought
not on TikTok though.
okay. I thought maybe an easy one would be to set your timer for like a 5-minute break throughout the day, maybe every 2-3 hours. Set a timer so that it goes off in your calendar or your computer, and take 5 minutes to breathe. And try
Wow.
that for 5 days.
Yeah, I'm in for
Mhm.
that. Or even taking a break.
Just
You know,
walking around.
Yeah,
and
just move your
stretch.
body
Yeah,
for 5 minutes here and there.
I think
Absolutely.
Fatima wants to see.
Yeah.
She can sing on
You want
top
to do,
of
but it's 5 minutes of
moving.
whatever. It's 5
Yeah.
minutes of whatever we want to do to help ourselves. Kind of what Rishma's saying is just to step away, have that time, and then come back into it. And I think that could be the breathing, it could be the singing, it could be the walking, it could be grabbing a cup of tea. Just get away.
Yes.
Set the important thing is to set it in your schedule, because that's what originally coffee breaks were for, to give yourself a break. But how many of us are missing coffee breaks now? Like I don't even do those anymore because you forget. So
So I
okay,
guess that's the challenge, is to take a break.
Yes.
Yeah, and taking, and what I would say is take an intentional break, right? So it's not just like, okay, I'm just going to step away from the computer for a couple of minutes and whatever, but it's actually to set that intention that, okay, for these next 2, 3, 5 minutes,
Mhm.
my mind is not going to be thinking about all the different things that I have on my to-do list and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to center myself, and I'm just going to focus on my deep breathing, and I'm just going to bring myself back to a relaxed and joyful and confident state, and then go on with the rest of my day.
Sounds
All right.
beautiful.
So that's our challenge for the next 30 days, I guess.
30.
Yep.
All right.
We seem to like to do everything in 30. So
30?
that,
So what do you call, we're calling it the 5-minute or
5-minute intention. No.
Intentional break.
Yeah.
Or you can call it a 5-minute nervous system reset,
okay.
There we go. I like that.
I like that
right?
too. Okay.
Because that is what we're trying to do, is we're just trying to reset our nervous system. We're trying to constantly bring it back to being stable and regulated, and then carry on with the rest of our day.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. So upcoming next week, we have a pretty busy schedule. So we've got on Wednesday, Dr. Teresa is coming in. She's going to be talking about breast health. Then we've got Sue Ward. She's coming in on the 20th. So on Thursday. So next week, we've got a double episode. Sue's going to be talking about how to enjoy the holidays without going overboard. And then on Thursday, November 3rd, we have Angie Romero coming in. She's going to be talking about your subconscious mind does not know the difference between past, present, and future. So very similar to what we're talking about. Then on the 16th, we've got Dr. Teresa coming in again. She's going to be talking about health optimization. And then on the 17th, we've got Mark Gordon coming back. So he's going to continue on with healthy relationships, why they matter. And we're going to be doing pillar number 2, which is communication. So again, stay tuned. Join us with our healthy, what was it? 5-minute.
We're doing a nervous system reset. 5-minute
go.
nervous system reset.
So join us for that. And if you haven't already, please follow us. We are the Healthy Way Vibes on all of our platforms. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning
Rishma.
in. Have a great day.
Guys.